Love is our true divine nature, and our heart serves as the intersection of the spiritual and physical, connecting our soul with our body as the conduit for anchoring our divinity onto the earth plane. Embodying our divinity is the key to our ascension and to manifesting our highest destiny in this life. The teachings of the heart are alchemy. Join spiritual mentor and channel Jennifer Spohr each week on a sacred journey to lift the veil to remembering your divinity and meet other beautiful souls who are living the path of the awakened heart. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I am just so giddy. I think that's the word to use today because I just love this guest so much, and I'm so thrilled and happy to share her magic with you today. We have Andrea Donnelly with us. She is the founder of We Are Here to Remember. Andrea Donnelly is a spiritual advisor, intuitive mentor, and creator of the future medicine healing modality, which she used to heal herself from previously disabling nerve pain. And she now certifies others in future medicine and shares it with people around the world looking to reclaim their sovereignty and multidimensional wellness. I love that so much. Welcome, my friends.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor and a joy to be here. Um, you and I have such a beautiful connection, and I'm just very excited to share with your audience and yeah, be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have all kinds of just really juicy topics that we want to share with you all who are listening today. But first, I really want to give you all an opportunity to get to know more about how amazing Andrea is. And so, Andrea, I would love for you to just kind of kick things off by sharing with us really more about your work, what it is, and what led you to this path.
Yeah, I love that. So I have always been someone, like from the time I have memories as a baby, I was always very much on my own path, and I can imagine or conceit, I essentially view myself as someone who, in this incarnation, remember a lot about the bigger truth. There were just times from the time, as I mentioned, when I was a baby, where I would have these really wild mystical experiences. And I come from a line of people who all had a lot of like psychic magic and, mystical acumen, as it were. So it was always something that was like very much part of my path. And coupled with that, I also always, from the time, again, that I have memories as a very small child, I was very aware of what we'll, think of, I guess, as like misinformation and ways that things that were happening on this planet did not make any sense to me. The just the distortions, the fact that we live out of sync with stewardship and justice, and there is, from my perspective, absolutely enough for every heart and hand on this planet, the people, the animals, the plants, the land, for all of us to really live in like harmony and stewardship with each other. And that was, to me, from day one, what my focus was on. And there were, of course, like a lot of things that I loved art and learning and philosophy and magic and spiritual things. And I was always a very, like had that like lifelong learner, deep levels of curiosity and interest. And I was always ultimately, my eyes on the prize was always to find a way to be able to like truly help this planet in as deep a way as possible. The arc of my own journey has been extremely complicated. I've experienced a lot of really intense, just like trauma and pain and stress from an early age that also, I think, informed, right, my perspective and created the circumstances where I was really called to deeply reconnect to what I think is our base frequency, which is the frequency of miracles. I think because of the um, energetics on this planet and the complex web of misinformation and dark light that affects so much of what we experience on Earth, that I was always, again, like very interested in finding a way to create an antidote to that. And through my own physical health, I was really called forward as part of that journey. So I've been in a number of different car accidents, which I said that with like a bit of a laugh, obviously. I'm not minimizing the experience, but there have been a lot of things that have happened that affected my physical health and ended up creating, this level of previously disabling nerve pain. And I always knew that I was meant to figure out how to heal myself from that. And so I spent, decades essentially going so deep into so many different, not just energy healing, but all kinds of different. I've studied herbal medicine and flower essences, and I've always been very, very focused on finding a way to, again, not just like heal myself and reclaim my divinity, my divine spark, my knowing that sense of cosmic wonder and magic and mysticism, but also really helping essentially guide other people out of the matrix, is how I think of it, and home to themselves. Because to me, that is the point from which we're really going to be able to like work our way out of this very complicated situation that we're in down here on this planet. And so it's been my guiding force, my greatest joy. And now I certify people in my method. My certification program starts this afternoon, which I'm so excited about. We're in our second year, and that has just been a massive gift because as I've moved through, especially the past few years from the time that I like officially started my practice in 2020, it's just been incredible to witness the ways that people have leveraged future medicine to create extraordinary miracles in their life, financial miracles, health and wellness miracles, all kinds of just extraordinary things have happened as a result of people, hiring me to guide them back home to themselves. And it's been so cool and so much fun. And I feel like in a lot of ways, like I feel like I'm just getting started. So that was perhaps a lot, but I hopefully answered your question.
There is never too much when it comes to you. I can take it in all day. Yeah, there's so much I want to unpack from what you've shared. The journey that you're describing, which thank you for sharing your journey with us. The journey that you're describing is the one of the embodied teacher, the embodied healer. And that is really, in my opinion, my very experienced opinion, that is what is missing so much still in the personal development and coaching and healing industry. Because I am also an embodied teacher, and there are many of us out there, but we are still very much like as a collective in this transitional state of moving from that whole fake it till you make it, feeling like you have to be perfect and show up in a certain way and define yourself in a certain way in order to be successful, to really learning how to get deeply grounded and rooted into our sense of selves and the truth of who we are, and then living embodied as that in the world. And so I think you are, I really know you are such a wonderful example of that. And thank you for all the work that you're doing.
You are so welcome. It's such a like cool, it's been such an amazing experience, especially the past few years, because I was always on this journey from a personal perspective. And of course, I've always been researching and learning and doing different things and cultivating my own skills and working on myself. But it was so amazing to officially start my practice in 2020, which is something I always knew that I would do. Like I always could see in my own future that I would eventually end up starting a practice and sharing my method with people, and then eventually also teaching it to others. And it's been so amazing because pretty much, from the beginning of when I started the practice, we were in this like wild experience in 2020, and I got to meet so many other incredible people who, like you, and so many others who really, in my opinion, are like rising to meet themselves and the collective in this place of deep knowing, of deep it's not, I feel like caring isn't even, it's like almost too small a word in this way, but really like taking our own experiences that we have deeply embodied over the arc of our human journey and finding a way to be able to articulate them and share them with the world. Because this is something I mean, I've literally thought about this for, I think, probably every single day of my entire life. I don't think at this point, as someone whose parents were peace activists, and I have a degree in American studies, which is in many ways history, and so I have spent a lot of time like in the more logical, like 3D, like here are the answers, this is the way that we sort of work our way out of things and create change. And I think there's a time for action, and I don't want to dismiss that. I don't think that like I think it's a mix at this point of the energetic and the embodied action. And I think that's where people like you and I really come to the table and have like a lot of wisdom to offer people. But I do feel like from a greater perspective, from like a planetary perspective, if the ways that people have typically imagined change would be created, if those things would have worked, from my perspective, they already would have worked, right? If, protesting your way out of a situation would have created a dynamic body of change on this planet, I think we'd already be there. And I
Yeah.
think that and I think the circumstances are a lot more complicated than most people realize. And again, I feel like that's where like the wisdom of people like you and I, who are really leading people through this very heart-led homecoming essentially, right? Where you're remembering like, oh my God, I am a powerful as fuck creator being who has all the magic in the world. And yes, because of circumstances on earth, things might not always be as like easy as possible from like a manifestation or a
Mhm.
co-creation perspective, but we possess the power and we don't need these shitty systems of garbage and nonsense that essentially permeate everything all over the entire planet, whether it's our food or our, the resources, our politics, our religion, all of these systems, from my perspective, and I feel like you and I are really, in concert with this opinion, are not here to serve us. They are here to create a lot of very complex circumstances of oppression and like I don't want it anymore. I'm not here for it. What I'm here to do again is to really help liberate all
Yeah.
hearts and hands, because I think that if we all like woke up tomorrow and said, you know what, these systems are absolute fucking nutter butter garbage. We don't want them anymore. They don't serve any of us. And so we're reclaiming our power. I feel like it would just be literal
Yeah.
endgame. And I feel like we're watching that now unfold of more and more and more and more people finding their way home, to people like you and I who are saying, I've always known that I was psychic and intuitive and magical and had the capacity to create extraordinary things for myself, for my family, for my community. And it's time now to like wildly reactivate that fucking wisdom and gift. And I have chills as I'm saying that, because I can like, I'm also tapping into just the enormity of, I know what like the act of working with me creates these incredible shifts for people, and it never stops exciting me. Like I am just I literally, for all the complexity, for all the stuff I've lived through, for all the ways where, being a human is complicated and hard, I wake up every day and I'm like, fuck yes, here I am. It's go time again. Like, even days where I'm tired and I'm just, like whatever the thing is, it's like always the thing that lights me up is this.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that absolutely. Uh, you said something about protesting, and we do that, and if that would have worked, then things would have changed by this point. I wanted to elaborate on that because what does happen is there are so many beings in this world who have the passion to impact change, who want to make a difference. And then what they turn around and do, what happens is they try to impact that change within the existing constructs, the very constructs that need to be dissolved, destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone who's listening to this conversation, there's a reason,
Yeah.
right? You are here to be one of the people that leads the way forward in transcending those constructs. And what you said, I also believe is, so true, is that so many of the systems that have been in place and that so obviously now are dismantling are ones that have promoted conformity, which is literally the opposite of who we are as these powerful divine creator beings. And many of them also are formed from a foundation of greed. And greed
Yes.
promotes violence, war. Greed promotes, and then it promotes illness.
Yeah.
Our medical models, big pharma. I mean, I could get we could dedicate our whole conversation more than that to this. But what I really want, one of the points I really want to drive home for people in our conversation today is just that power. It's reclaiming your divine power. It's to know that you are here to make an impact, to illuminate the way to create change. And the most direct path to that is getting really embodied in who you are, your gifts, and your truth, and feeling that in your body and living that every day. Moving from, even like you said, feeling and intellectual knowing and understanding to feeling the vibration of that frequency in every cell of your body.
Yeah. 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 And it's, and it feels like I know sometimes, I'll say things and I can like immediately know that there are going to be people out there, giving me stink eye in the ether, being like, that can't, like, there's just no way that's true. But sometimes I'll say things, and I mean this so deeply. Like, I think that honestly, if there's one thing that someone really focused on at this point in human experience, it is to get like deeply well, get your own house in order, really come home to your own heart's wisdom, do whatever you possibly can to really go deep in your own healing, to really, like, it feels like this is the lifetime where these things are so urgently needed, because as you do that work yourself and as you come home to the truth of who you are, as you extricate yourself from those systems and you reclaim the beautiful, enormous truth of who you are, it also creates this beautiful ripple effect, is how I always see it, right? It's like the more you reclaim your own divine blueprint and start moving to the beat of that drum, that rhythm, that uniqueness that is like singularly you, the more room it makes from like a broader perspective for other people, just through like, will like psychic osmosis or something. It ends up creating these like maps of possibility that affect greater change. And so I just feel like, we're really in this like window of extraordinary potential for change. And I think that this is the time when, like, for simplicity, I feel like it's bigger than that, but it feels like this is a lifetime where this false matrix that has been affecting so much on this planet and even outside this realm feels like this is the time when it just goes down.
Yeah,
And we're witnessing it dissolve and it's messy and it's hard and it's complicated, and all of those things are true. And it definitely, when I tune into where we're headed, it just feels like it's like this literal unstoppable momentum, where there are so many people like you and me and everyone listening and people around the world who really are here to find their own antidote essentially to this garbage nonsense, and create a like true reclamation of all of our power.
yeah,
So it just feels fucking, it's exciting. It's a
yeah.
wild time to be
And it,
alive.
yes, it is. And it's also a journey that isn't for the faint of heart. And there is no, I
Yeah,
just like to keep it real. There
yeah,
is no getting around, no matter who you are, there is no getting around you being required to dig within the deepest depths of your being, the courage and you know, the devotion to move forward when you are literally creating a path that's illuminating the way for others. So that being said, but we all do share a lot of common challenges on this journey. And I'd love for you to share with us, uh, excuse me just a second. Okay. I'd love for you to share with us what are some in your experience, in your personal journey, and also in your experience with clients, what are some of the most common challenges that people are experiencing, and how can those listening uh, avoid some of the potholes, so to speak?
I love this question so much. I feel like one of the biggest things that people come up against as they're on this journey of reclaiming their co-creative powers, their intuition, their psychic acumen, their spiritual intelligence, all of this wisdom that essentially, from my perspective, I also just kind of think of them in a broader perspective as the whispers of our own heart, right? Which to me is like that divine spark and that point of like eternal divinity that we all possess. I feel like people often, especially when they're at the beginning of the journey, um, we sort of imagine that, like, especially psychic experiences are going to be like mind blowing, and they can be. And I don't want to dismiss that, but I feel like there's also a way where, especially when you're at the beginning of the journey, like I have a type of session I do for people, which is called a psychic gifts activation. And I always tell people when we're on those calls and in the aftermath, start spending some time every day for 30 days, for 60 days, for 6 months, for a year, literally writing down the things that happen. Take a couple minutes every day and tune into your own intuition. And even if things seem wacky and don't make sense and you don't understand why it is that you are thinking that you need to start to like sort of map these things out, take note of them. And this is true too, like no matter where you are on the journey, whether you're a beginner or whether you're on the path, I feel like the reason to me why those things are so important is there's a lot of kind of like small things that over time help us understand the puzzle of who we are. And I feel like when people get sort of too focused on what the results are going to look like instead of just allowing their heart to guide them forward, they can miss important information because it doesn't seem important. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, if I had like now I'm remembering, I'm having to sort of like go back and reverse engineer the process. Whereas if you give yourself room at the beginning or, wherever you are in the journey to really start to put those pieces of your own puzzle together, things start to add up and you start to engage in a deeper level of pattern recognition and understanding. And you start to also make sense of how your own intuition and psychic gifts present, because there are so many different ways that we can experience and connect to our own divinity and to true creator. And I think that's another part of it is like there's so much wisdom that our body and our psychic senses hold, and it's not the same for everyone. And so I feel like, again, that act of like sitting in, whether it's a meditative practice or a journaling or whatever it is that you have time to carve out for yourself every day, but like reflecting back, putting the pieces of your own puzzle together over time in small ways has a really big effect. And the other thing that I would just say, is I feel like we've been talking a lot also about embodied action, and I feel like that's another really important thing, right? I mean, you and I'm sure, could spend like 5,000 hours touching on this
Yes.
for people, but there's a way where, I think a lot of times people feel like, oh, everything has to be perfect before I try to do something different. And it's like, actually, you just have to fucking start. Like, whatever it is that's calling you forward, even if it's scary, like my whole life. I have been like, oh, I know I need to do this thing, but like, man, oh man, it's gonna like, it's intense and it's scary and like, ooh, I might be like white knuckling it a little bit, but like, I'm gonna get out there and do it no matter how intense it feels. And I think that is another really big like truth that I feel like people really, especially in the new age community, there's this idea that like, oh, things will like align perfectly. And like, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but we are on Earth and it is very complicated down here. And I think that if we wait for a perfect moment, it's probably never going to materialize. The
When you
perfect
feel
moment
guided,
is this.
when you feel guided, that's the time.
Yeah. 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 Yep.
It's
And like
not,
call,
you
yeah.
know, God isn't giving you like a, or your highest self isn't giving you, something, some piece of guidance to then say, oh, and then you're going to do this in a year. No, and you get the guidance. Now is the time, and that's one of the greatest challenges is taking that leap, because again, the programming and conditioning is so very deeply embedded
Oh,
in
yeah.
all of us to conform, and that things can only be done a certain way, and that your life here has to be lived in this particular chronological order, and just none of it is true. So, um,
Yes.
speaking of breaking the mold and transcending constructs, I'd also love to touch on human design, because although neither one of us are, proclaimed experts in human design, I feel like both of us are very connected with it. And we're both also projectors, which represent only about 20% or so of the population. And so for those listening, whether you are a projector in human design or you know one, you're going to benefit from this conversation. And you're also going to benefit from this part of the conversation as well, because we're going to be talking about themes like deconditioning, which are all things that no matter how you're wired, you experience on this journey. Again, connecting back to what we've been talking about off and on this whole conversation so far about transcending the matrix, transcending those constructs. So I would really love for you to share, like what have been some of the greatest discoveries, but also like some of the greatest challenges in, that deconditioning journey, in that really like aligning yourself to more and more of the truth of who you are.
I love this question so much. Yeah, I feel like the deconditioning element of it is so important, right? And you touched on it. It's not just for us, it's for literally the whole planet, because we are all so heavily affected by, we'll call them like the energies of servitude that exist, that are woven into every part of society, right? You touched on the fact that we're told that there's this linear path that we're supposed to live out. And that was never, none of that ever, none of those things ever worked for me. I was never able to have a level of like success at any, even jobs that I loved. I ended up really burnt out. I ended up like really needing a far greater amount of time to myself, to just like be in my own energy, to experience my own experience, to really essentially decondition, right? To clear my field of other people's energy, to be able to like stay well and focused and clear. And I have always moved to the beat of my own drum. I am someone who, I tend to like work in ways that don't make sense and are hyper nonlinear. And so none of that, right? Like none of those things ever created the circumstances in which I would be thriving in, for example, a corporate environment. Like the way that I move doesn't, like there are all of these ways where the way that I succeed looks so different, both in practice and even if I were to like write down all the secrets on paper, radically different than any of the noise that's coming from, society and from all of the different like constructs that we have about how to move. And I just understood so deeply, even before I ever heard the term projector, that there were these ways where all of the things that other people were able to do and sort of function, that like none of those things worked for me. And that ultimately what I was here to do was like very deeply love myself, remember who the fuck I was, and essentially use that information and that wisdom to help guide people home to themselves. Because one of the reasons I think for projectors we have this like need to decondition so deeply is because we have this unique capacity to be able to really see things from a bird's eye perspective, and to be able to like deeply energetically tune into and understand what is happening around us. I feel like we possess like extraordinary psychic gifts as a result of this often, right? Like I remember being a young person, and even like as I move through the arc of my life, like sometimes I'll just be out on the street and I'll like literally hear people's thoughts, right? Like I'm not, and I've gotten like wild confirmation over the years about this. And to be clear, I'm not trying to psychically spy on anyone. I'm mostly just trying at this point to zip it up and mind my P's and Q's and certainly use that information to help the people who find me to guide them home to themselves. But I think that all of that can feel really overwhelming to especially projectors because we have this deep level of what I think of like the claircognizance, the knowing, where we just know things. We know things about our friends, we know things about our family, we know things about our community, we understand things about the systems that are at play. And it's like this singular, really unique gift that each of us possesses where we can see what the problem is and also ways that things could shift to essentially recalibrate so it didn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
And I feel like we are in a lot of ways like guides to be able to not just recalibrate like an individual experience, but to really be a point of recalibration for broader systems because of this like unique lens of perception that we all possess. And as part of being able to do that, honoring especially the deconditioning part of it, where you start to say, okay, I really, to be able to do this, it does require a lot of like psychic and emotional and spiritual energy. And that also means that, I'm going to spend one day a week laying in my bed, looking out my window, watching what I call bird TV, which is the beautiful view of the sky that I have, and just like chilling out and taking like a day of rest every week for me is a really important thing to do. As an entrepreneur, we know the entrepreneurial journey is wild and we're kind of in a lot of ways often always working, but for me to be able to do something like go and work from my bed, on days when I have stuff that I have to do, but I also know that I need to just like chill out and sort of do it from like the comfort of literally my bed. To me, that is something that like to decondition, right? I mean, how many people will be like, my God, what a lazy ninny that person, like that sort of
Well,
narrative from the
that's
collective
the
of,
program.
yeah,
That's the
yep,
program, right? That we're all handed is that
yep,
in order to accomplish anything or accomplish more, we have to do more. And I mirror everything that you said also. And to provide everyone with a little further clarity, I like talking about human design because if you're in a place on your journey, especially where you're still questioning yourself and not totally trusting yourself, being able to use that as a tool to look at how you're wired can be very validating for you.
yeah,
Now, I want to say beyond that, right? You can learn how to trust in the intuitive guidance you're receiving, in truths about who you are and how you feel and how you're being called to show up and live your life in the world, free of any tool. And projectors especially are are great guides, right? I mean, I'm not trying to talk us up, but I am because, like we are the orchestrators, right?
yeah,
We're not the doers. We're the people who see the big picture of everything, the universe, beyond the world, and the most efficient way at a collective level and also at an individual level for those we're choosing to support, right? To aid them in their most direct, highest timeline forward. But no matter how you're wired, you have an intuitive voice, you have a higher self, you have a knowing about what you're being called to. And the more that you surrender to it and let go of how your mind thinks you're supposed to show up versus how your body is guiding you to show up, then you can reach that space, right? Of becoming
yeah.
super grounded and embodied and shining your light as who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that I think you and I talked about this, or I think I mentioned this on a call that you and I had a couple of months ago, but I remember years ago reading a quote from a Google executive who said something to the effect of, I like to hire really fucking smart, lazy people because I know they're gonna get in and they're gonna, read a system and be like, we don't need to be doing any of that. I'm gonna tell you the most efficient way that we can possibly
Yes.
cut out the noise and the nonsense and the garbledy-goop and get from point A to point B 1,000 times fucking faster. And I knew when I read that, I was like, I am that person. I possess that capacity to
Yes.
be able to just be like, why are we doing all of that? That doesn't make any sense. There's a much more efficient way. And I feel like that's another really powerful gift and something that I really love about that energy of projector and just the way that we kind of move is it's like on the one hand it's this like really powerful, very from my perspective like metaphysical, magical way of relating to the world, but it's also very grounded.
Mhm.
And it is very much about like, what can I do to give, the people, the good people of Earth, the people who find me, the people who I mentor and work with, how can I give them also really clear, practical ways of being able to integrate this like really beautiful metaphysical divine wisdom. And I think that's another really unique gift that we bring to the table for people is it's not just this like abstract idea, right, about like metaphysics and the divine and the spiritual, but it's like this grounded way of then saying, how do I take all of that and really make it my own and be able to use it to create something beautiful for myself, for my kids, for my animal companions, for the land on which I live, right? We are people who are like deeply nurtured by the land, and I feel like that is a truth for everyone on earth, but I think that we're really here in a lot of ways too to help resteward and reconnect people back to that very earth-based heart wisdom,
Yes.
which does change things. So I feel like I really love what we're doing for, for certainly the people who find us, but for the planet as a whole, because everyone needs to decondition, right? As we've now said a few times, it's not just about like each of us who's a projector finding a way to do it. It's about everyone on Earth saying, you know what? This does not work for me. I don't want it. I'm exhausted in too many different ways to articulate or count, and like I want something better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. And we are part heaven and earth, right? We're all interconnected.
Yeah.
Um, we're not separate. And that's another program that we are taught to live and to navigate our life here as if everything is separate. Our business, our relationships, our occupation, what we enjoy to do in our leisure time, our lifestyle, none of it is separate. It is all connected. Andrea, of course we could talk all day long. And I really would love to. But in closing, what else are you feeling intuitively guided to bring forward?
You know, this is this is something that's been kind of like poking in my brain since we started the conversation. And I feel like it's a beautiful place to end. One of the things about me is, I mentioned that I've always had this very like lifelong, desire to learn and to remember and to integrate and to just like, I am so curious in so many different ways. And I remember years ago, because I had always been being called from the time I was little, people would often be like, you are the weirdest person I've ever met. And so as a, lifelong nerd and a deeply curious human in many different respects, I was like, what does the word weird really mean? I love etymology. I love to get to the bottom of sort of the root of how things originated. And the word weird translates in Old German to mean destiny. And that blew my frickin' mind, Jennifer. I remember reading that and being like, because to me, if I take it one step further, I think about what destiny is, right? To me, like destiny is again this thing you and I have been talking about this whole time. And I feel like what we're really leading people to, which is for me, what I perceive destiny to be, is your own unique rhythm, your own heart wisdom, and your connection to that divine spark and true creator. And so to me, I was like, wow, the word weird actually means this really really powerful, really beautiful thing. And as part of the endless misinformation that we're told
Yes.
by, right, the fake matrix, we're told that we need to change those things about us that are different, that are unusual, that are, essentially like our unique freak flag, that we're like, but we're really meant to let those things fly, because as you reconnect to that, it creates this incredible ripple through everything that you're doing. And the more you can say, I know society is out there telling me that I have to be, a round peg in a round hole, or a square peg in a square hole, and I can't do these things, and I'm not, I've got to like change this thing about myself and suppress this and do this differently, and all of the different things that we're told from that conditioning perspective. The more we can just be like, you know what? I'm weird and I fucking love it. And this is the truth of who I am. And I have found a way to be able to make a life for myself that, for all the complexity of being a human and this planet in general, really works within, for me. That is like the ultimate like goal and joy.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that I got a chance to be here with you and with everyone on the podcast. I'm just I'm so excited to like hear how this lands with everybody. Oh, and anyone, when you guys are listening, if you are interested in experiencing future medicine, then you can just I know Jennifer is going to link all my information, but you can use the code HEART whenever you're listening to this. I have a monthly group healing called Future Medicine Monthly, and you guys can use that code to register for free. Um,
And we will have links in the show notes, and your website will be there as well, too, correct? So
yep,
for those who
yep,
want to connect with you more deeply.
yep, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Boom. That's a great place to end. I
Oh,
love that.
thank you
And it's
so
so cool.
much.
Yes, yes, yes. I just love you. Thank you so much, Andrea. Such a pleasure to have you today. Thank you for listening to Path of the Awakened Heart. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or pathoftheawakenedheart.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about living with an awakened heart and navigating your ascension journey, visit me at jenniferspore.com.